Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 295. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another guest. So, as you know, about over a year ago, I quit doing interviews on this podcast, but I have occasionally had guests come on, random guests, not my monthly guests, Joe and Joanna. I've had random people come on to do an episode with, and it's not an interview, it's a conversation. Now, I'm still not accepting pitches to be a guest on the show because it's something that I do very once in a while. And it's the kind of thing where I'm having a conversation with someone that I know I can have a really juicy and useful conversation with, which is not always the case when people approach me from out of the blue. I really want to make sure that these conversations are deep and juicy and interesting and useful to you, because otherwise it's a waste of time. And I really don't want to waste your time because I really value the fact that you are subscribed to this podcast and are listening to me every week. I am very, very grateful to that. So today's podcast with Sharon Locke came about as a result of a conversation that Sharon and I one day when we were just having a Skype call to catch up. And I realized that it would make a really good podcast. And we came up with this idea about 4 months ago. And between renovations on Sharon's house and all kinds of stuff, the holidays, end of the year, it's just now happening. So I'm super excited that we finally had this conversation in a way that we could share with someone else and that we can get it out there. So who is Sharon Locke? Sharon, I first met back in 2013 when I was doing my PSYCH-K training. So I did my basic workshop with Cassie Dare at the end of July in 2013. As you know, used it a lot, loved the technique, loved the tool, and I was very anxious to do the advanced integration workshop. And Cassie had originally planned one for somewhere down south. I think she was doing workshops at the time in Brighton and Hove, and I had signed up for one of those. And she ended up having to cancel it for some reason or another. And I said, well, what can I do? I really had my heart set on this workshop. And she said, well, got another one up in Leeds. And Sharon was the person who was hosting it up in Leeds or sponsoring the workshop. And I thought, well, I don't know where the heck Leeds is, but I'm going. When I got on Google Maps and I went, oh my God, it's up in Yorkshire. How am I going to get up there? I hope there's a train. And of course there was. And I signed up. I went and had another life-changing experience. And that really deepened the mindset work that I did with myself and with other people. So as I said, Sharon had sponsored that workshop. And that was where I first met her. And I went on to see her at other PSYCH-K workshops, the advanced integration retreat. I mean, she's someone that I consider a very good friend, and we catch up on Skype all the time. And I am very, very happy to have her in my life. I've done a lot of PSYCH-K work with her. Like, she's facilitated sessions with me. She's an absolute fantastic facilitator, and she has since gone on to become an instructor herself. So Sharon is joining me today, and I'm going to read her official bio right before we get into the episode. So Sharon is passionate about supporting people to achieve optimum health, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being with the right mindset in place to support that goal. Her mission is to help people to let go of limiting beliefs in order to help them break through barriers to achieving their goals and to becoming the best expression of themselves they can be. At the same time, she also understands the importance of taking action to achieve those goals and the subconscious resistance or self-sabotage that emerges as part of that process. She has an impressive toolkit of skills gathered over the last 15+ years to help deal with all aspects of those challenges. She knows exactly what to do when you get stuck. She is never happier than when she is able to teach PSYCH-K, empowering individuals to make deep and profound changes within their own lives. So she's the perfect person to have this conversation with. And what we're going to talk about today is how to make mindset work a habit. And this is something that I've talked about before. I actually did another podcast episode, number 230 of the same title, How to Make a Mindset Work a Habit. And that was just a solo episode with myself, talking from my perspective about why I think it's so important to make this work a habit. And this is a very important topic for me because back when I was working with clients on a regular basis, seeing people who would do some work and go away and come back and then go away. And I know that they were letting a lot of time go between sessions, which is fine. But I also had the feeling that they weren't doing a lot of work with themselves on their own. And I really feel like a lot of people who are interested in doing mindset work and making these changes could really, really benefit from doing this work with themselves on a regular basis and using this mindset work to lift themselves up and to make small, consistent, regular changes in their lives. I personally have really benefited from making this work a habit, and I would love to see more people do so. So that is the motivation behind having this conversation with Sharon. So what are you going to learn today? We're going to talk about what is mindset, because I realize I often forget to talk about that. We talk about what it means when we talk about doing mindset work, because I talk about doing mindset work a lot, and every once in a while someone will say to me, what does that even mean to do mindset work? We talk about how we began doing mindset work, my journey, Sharon's journey, how we came to this. We discuss what our own personal mindset practice looks like. We discuss how our own mindset practice has evolved over the years, because it has changed for both of us. We discuss why our lives have changed and how our lives have changed from doing this work with ourselves. We talk about why it's so important to train in a technique so you can work with yourself, and how to find the right technique for you, because sometimes it takes some trial and error before you figure out which is the best technique for you. And there might be more than one. Next, we talk about how to get extra support by having sessions with another professional, because sometimes we need a little help. We discuss how to know when it's time to ask for help from someone else. We explore the concept of resistance, what it looks like, and how to tell when you're experiencing it. We also discuss secondary gain. What is secondary gain, and how to know if you've got it, because it can sometimes be a bit tricky to realize when we've got that going on. We discuss how to get the confidence to work on your own with yourself. So if you've taken a workshop in something and you want to go home and use it, but maybe you're not feeling confident enough, how to get that confidence. We discuss how our mindset work actually benefits other people in our lives, not just ourselves. And finally, we talk about how to make your mindset work a habit and a regular practice in your life. So I hope you find this episode interesting and useful and inspiring. And I think Sharon brings a really different perspective to mine, but also complementary, that really adds another level to this conversation and to the concept of why it's so important to make mindset work a habit and how we can really benefit from doing this work with ourselves on a regular and consistent basis. So without further ado, I will pass you on to the conversation and the episode. Hey, Sharon.
Hi, Holly.
How are you doing today?
Really good, thanks. It's sunny here. Sunny with you?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yes, it's a miracle. So I'm super excited to have this conversation with you, because I've been on much of my journey through this mindset stuff with you, and you have much more experience than I do in this. So I'm really excited to kind of dig into this topic, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to make mindset work a habit. And this is something that I've talked about on my own, but I really am looking forward to hearing your opinion on this and having this conversation with you. So I think we should start out by saying, what is mindset work? So how do you view mindset work? Like, how would you define it?
So mindset work is, when something's challenging you in your life, or, you're not moving the direction you want to go, you're coming up against blocks, things that's challenging or difficult. Often the block is coming from mindset stuff. if we rely on habits and sort of, I don't know, taking action to make changes, sometimes that's doable, but it needs repetition an awful lot. And I think the mindset stuff, if we're in the right mindset to make the change, if we're ready to make that change, willing and able, then the actions follow much more easily. I don't know whether you would agree, Holly.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the biggest result that I've seen from doing mindset work with myself, and that's kind of the biggest comments that I have gotten from clients over the years, is that after doing the mindset work, it's easier to take the actions that we already knew we needed to take, but we were procrastinating on or struggling with, or it was just like pulling teeth trying to get things done.
Exactly. So rather than it being a challenge, it being hard work, and that's the experience that you have to push.
Yes.
You know, when you've got the right mindset, or you've done the right mindset work to be in the right space to be able to move forward, then there's a sense of flow and ease about moving forward in the direction you want to go. It feels very different.
Yes, absolutely. And as we're having this conversation, I'm realizing that perhaps we should have taken it even one step back and said, what is mindset?
Yeah, sure. How would you define mindset, Holly?
I would say that mindset is like our own personal collection of beliefs, both positive, enhancing, or limiting, our fears, because those kind of inform our beliefs. It's the kind of the lens we use to see the world. And it's also the blocks that we have. And the blocks are often kind of limiting beliefs, but it's kind of our attitudes and beliefs that we operate with as we go through life.
And often these come from experiences in life, don't they? Some of the beliefs that are limiting us in some way, maybe we're programmed in super early in life when we are quite programmable, that hypnagogic stage up until about the age of 7. But even in utero, I mean, Bruce Lipton talks about this an awful lot in his work about how limiting beliefs are laid down and how they run as programs in our subconscious. So we don't always have access to them. But the way that we know they're there is because, you know, they're showing up in our life every day. You know, whatever our life experience is based on those fundamental beliefs, whether they're supportive, enhancing beliefs or limiting ones. So that's where the blocks often are uncovered, you know, where there's a limiting belief that's kind of holding you back in some way. So being able to identify those and change those, that's a big part of mindset work, or particularly the mindset work that I do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think one of the things or the questions that people have when they start kind of approaching this concept is, well, how do I know what's going on in my subconscious? How do I know what these beliefs are if I'm not consciously aware of them?
Mm-hmm. And usually the answer to that question is that you see it. You know, if there's something that's not working in your life, typically it's showing you there's a limiting belief underpinning that. So usually it's your life experience. Things are not going in the direction you want to go. There's something that's there within your subconscious that's blocking that, which you want, that thing that you want in your life.
Yeah. And also when you kind of procrastinate on things, you're not taking the actions that you want to take, you can stop and think, well, why am I not doing this? Because I want the result, but I'm not willing to do the work to get there. So what's going on for me? What am I afraid of? What do I believe that I can't do it?
Yep. So that's usually where there's a limiting belief going on under the surface. So you might not know what it is, but you know that block's there.
Yeah.
So it's about exploring what that is.
So how did you begin doing mindset work? How did you first start getting involved in doing this work with yourself and with other people?
Well, I guess I've always been passionate about personal development. I've always been interested in natural medicine, and actually my entry into working with mindset stuff or mindset work was through homeopathy. So I originally trained as a homeopath and supported people, particularly with health and well-being, but actually also lots of emotional stuff too. So prescribing homeopathic remedies to support them to move in the direction they wanted to go, whether it was working with a very physical condition or an emotional state. And so that was my kind of entry into supporting and working with people. And I love that. And I love homeopathy. But on my journey, and particularly as a result of having my eldest child, who's now 17, Alex, he struggled from being quite small with food intolerance and sensitivity. And so on my journey, I found a method of using muscle testing, so kinesiology, muscle testing, to be able to access information within his subconscious to find out what was going on, to be able to support him with whatever he needed, in whatever order he needed, whether that was a homeopathic remedy, a flower essence, or something else, nutritional perhaps, to support his body to be able to cope with foods in a way that he hadn't been able to, being very, very small. So that was incredible. Went on a training course, met a lovely lady on that course, and we stayed in touch to be able to practice the muscle testing together. And she emailed me a little bit further down the line and said, I'm doing this course, Sharon. I think you'll be really interested. Let me know if you want to go. And I was having all sorts of work done on the house at home at the time, didn't really look at the email, just skimmed over it and then left it. Then when I was in a position to come back and look at it, there was a YouTube clip from Rob Williams, the originator of PSYCH-K, which is the tool that I use today, talking about what is PSYCH-K. I watched the YouTube clip. I watched it once, twice. I think it must have been about 4 times.
Wow.
I was so blown away. And it was literally Rob just talking about what is PSYCH-K. So there's no demonstration, no explanation beyond what it was and what its ability was to be able to change limiting beliefs. Then when I looked at the information, the flyer, I just knew in my body, every part of my physical body knew that I needed to go to this workshop. Looked at the flyer. It was the next day, oh my goodness, in Birmingham, and had all this stuff going on at home, a small child. But I was there. And actually that first workshop, it was a 2-day workshop at the time, blew me away. And that really started my journey in more depth, I suppose, looking at mindset and being able to change limiting beliefs and really change them quite quickly and move in the direction that you want to go with your life. So I have to say it profoundly changed my life. I then did the advanced the following year. And now, over 10 years later, I'm in the fortunate position to be able to teach that tool.
Yay.
So it's just phenomenal. Yeah. So that was really my journey. And what I would say is that it found me. You know, I didn't go searching for it necessarily. It found me and profoundly changed my life.
Yeah. I always say that my life is before and after PSYCH-K.
Me too. Me too. Absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah.
We're so blessed.
I know. It's such an easy tool to use. And people who have heard my podcast have heard me talk about PSYCH-K a lot. I've talked about it many times. But I think the important thing is to find what works for you, because
exactly.
I first approached this, I trained as a coach. So I kind of started approaching the concept of mindset through coaching, but that's working very much at the conscious level, not the subconscious level. And then I trained as an NLP practitioner, and that's working at the subconscious level. But it was just so complicated, and there's just so many, I don't know, it just did not resonate with me. And so I trained in it, and I loved it, and I felt like it deepened kind of my awareness of the world and how I approach things, but I didn't use the tool because it just wasn't my thing. And it wasn't until I discovered PSYCH-K and trained in it that I realized that was my thing, and that was the thing that worked for me, and that was what I really enjoyed using. And I'd gone to other practitioners and other facilitators using different techniques, and I'd tried different things, and it was like nothing was quite right. So I really did kind of have to experiment with different things before I found the thing that worked for me. And it's not to say that the other techniques didn't work, because absolutely they did, but they just didn't. I don't know what it is. It was like they weren't as satisfying. They didn't click. It wasn't, I don't know. How would you describe that?
I think there's something about resonance too. And in the time of my life where, you know, I was a homeopath, and I'll just clarify, actually, my homeopathic practice I've let go of completely, and my full focus is PSYCH-K. And that was a gradual process, but that's where I'm at in my life and teaching it. But resonance is an important thing. And so in that part of my life, I resonated a lot with homeopathy, and it was kind of like I was resonating on that same level. I encountered PSYCH-K without even knowing what it is, and there was this huge resonance in my body. And I think that, you know, it's almost like every cell in my body knew and resonated with PSYCH-K and knew that that was the direction. There's no doubt the direction that I needed to go. But I think finding a tool, something that you resonate with, is a great thing. So my advice to anyone is to explore, really, to begin with, to find that and be okay with exploring a number of different tools.
Yes, absolutely. Because you might not get it right on the first try.
No, and be okay, because the thing is that is part of your journey.
Absolutely.
And so sometimes people say, well, how do I know if that's the right tool? How do I know if this is the right tool for me? Well, explore and discover, and you'll learn something. And synchronistically, like on my journey, you know, meeting that person and then them kind of directing me to PSYCH-K, there's the synchronistic dots that you join that actually often you only see in hindsight when you look back and think, oh, do you know, if I hadn't have met that person, or if I hadn't have gone to that workshop, then I wouldn't be where I am right now.
Mm.
Nothing is ever, that's my belief anyway, nothing is ever wasted.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it helps to have the experience of the things that didn't resonate with you so that when something does resonate with you, you're like, this is it. I know it's it because it's not like those other things that weren't it.
Yeah. So you've got a reference point, haven't you?
Yeah, point of comparison. Yeah.
Good stuff.
So what does your mindset practice look like? How do you use PSYCH-K in your life?
It's changed over the years, I have to say. At the moment, generally, I use it as and when I need it. So as and when I come across a block or a challenge in my life, it's instantly there for me to be able to access and use, and then on my journey again. And it's like the speed bumps in the road that you encounter. I know now that when I need to use it and just reach for it automatically, it's become a practice that is something that I use as and when, wherever. How about you, Holly?
So I always say it kind of comes in ebbs and flows. Like there are weeks where I'm using it a lot because I've hit one of the speed bumps and I need to be working on this issue with myself. And then there are weeks, and I don't want to say months because I probably don't go more than a month without using it. But there are many weeks where I don't use it. So it's when I need it, I use it. And when I don't need it, I don't use it. And I've also kind of feel like when I do a lot of intense work with myself, then I naturally need the time to integrate it.
Yes.
Because I can be kind of intense. Because I love these tools so much. And so when I'm using it quite a bit. I have this friend, Joanna Hennon, and oftentimes I'll go to Brussels to visit her. She trained in PSYCH-K last year. And when I go to stay with her, and it's usually when her husband is away doing something and her son is at school, we get a little bit obsessed and we do PSYCH-K. I don't know. I want to say like 6 hours a day, 4 days in a row. Like it's like an intense, and we treat it like a retreat, and we're like playing, and we, do relationship outs, and we do all kinds of stuff, but it's really full on. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of come out of those retreats and come home, and it's like, okay, I don't need to do anything for a long time because I've just done so much, and I need to integrate. Because I've done possibly too much in a very kind of short period of time. So, which
is a little bit like attending a workshop where not only you're learning, but you're, for the advanced workshop, particularly 4 days of transformation as well as learning alongside. Mm-hmm. So that's interesting. What I would say is I divide it into two things. So working with myself, I generally at the moment just reach for PSYCH-K when I need it. Yeah. So when there's a block, when there's something going on, I am absolutely like you. There are ebbs and flows. So there's times where I use it a lot. And then there's times of integration or times when I don't need it quite so much and I feel it in flow. Mm-hmm. The other thing I do regularly and working on being more disciplined with is being of service. And that's working and using PSYCH-K in a bigger way. So beyond myself. And that is more of a practice than, reaching for it as and when I need it. So there's two different ways that I use it that's worth acknowledging too for the greater good.
So what does that look like, you using PSYCH-K as a service in a bigger sense?
So there is something that we teach now in basic workshop. It's called the Gaia Project. And it's using PSYCH-K in a way to support the evolution of the planet as it is. Things are moving so quickly these days. And so it's being able to provide that space of opportunity for those to grow and develop and the planet to move in the direction that it's going.
And so that's something you do on a regular basis?
Yeah, I try to do that at least once a week.
Okay.
As a kind of practice. And I know that some of the facilitators are starting to do that now. So creating that space, opening what we call a portal to be able to help and support anyone who needs it, really, transformation-wise.
Lovely. So how has your mindset practice evolved over the years? Because I know how I use PSYCH-K, how I work with myself has changed a lot since I first did the training.
Mine has too. And again, I've gone through stages where it's changed. I know last year, well, actually the year before, what I found that I was just working with changing beliefs as and when I needed to, and then letting go. So I wasn't really recording anything that I was doing. I wasn't writing down sort of, we call them goal statements in PSYCH-K when working with beliefs. I wasn't writing them down or recording them. I was just literally, I want to change this right now, change it, and then move forward, take action, and step into the new potential, if you like. And then when you come up against another block or another challenge, identify and change a belief, move forward again. And that was the way I worked for quite a number of years. Last year was slightly different, and I knew there was a lot of things that I was going to experience last year in terms of growth and development for myself. And so at the beginning of the year, what I decided to do was to just start a journal. And it was really a PSYCH-K journal more than anything else. I was recording the work that I was doing. So if ever I was working on a belief, I'd write it down. I'd write down the action steps that I'd taken. And then maybe I'd also include some reflection as to what had happened as a result of the changes that I'd made, or any further reflection on other things that I thought that I needed to work with. And so I did that consistently for the whole of last year, and was astounded actually when I looked back at some of the things that I'd worked with, some of the changes that had happened, some of the synchronistic experiences that I'd had, the threads of change and what that had led to was really fascinating. So I enjoyed doing that. I don't know, have you ever done that?
Yes. Well, when I first trained in PSYCH-K, I was very obsessed with it because I loved it so much. It was so easy to use. And there were a lot of things that I wanted to shift in my life. So I went home after the basic workshop and I was probably balancing 20 beliefs a day. And because I knew once you do it, you don't need to do it over again. It's not like repeating affirmations where you have to do them every day for forever. I thought, well, throw it away. So I would, have these lists and sheets of belief statements, and I'd be like, well, that's done. And I would throw it away. Mm-hmm. And then it got to the point where I realized, I wonder what I was working on all those years. And I started writing them down in my journal. And I don't have a special journal for this. I just use my regular journal because I like to see how it integrates into the rest of my life and the other things that are going on. Write down all of the belief statements or the goal statements. I don't necessarily write down the action plan there. I just kind of take the actions. And I haven't really done any kind of journaling to reflect on that. But I love going through my old journals now and seeing, oh, wow, I balanced for that and it came true. It happened. I made it happen. And, I balanced for that I was really afraid of, that I was really procrastinating on. And then I did it. Like, I love having the record of this now. And I wish I had done it from the beginning to see exactly what work I've done and how that's changed my life.
Because I think often when you make changes, you don't often, you step into the new potential and sometimes you don't connect, or you're not able to step into that space of, well, how did I feel before? Mm-hmm. How did I feel? What was that challenge really like? Because you've stepped into that new potential quickly and easily. And so you're in that new reality. So to step back and think, well, what was the reality like before? Sometimes I've looked at some of my notes and thought, did I really feel like that? Was that really? Why did I feel like I needed to work with that? Because you've embodied that new belief. And as a result, that new state of being.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's a new version of you, and you
like
don't
an upgrade.
Exactly. It's absolutely an upgrade.
2.1.
Exactly. That is exactly what it is. It's a mindset upgrade. It's a belief upgrade. It's a you upgrade, because you're letting go of the stuff that no longer serves you, the limiting beliefs, the fears, the blocks, the stuff that is not useful to you because you want to be moving forward.
That's right. Yeah.
I love it.
It's fascinating.
I love it. So I often say to people that I think it's really important for everyone who's interested in doing this kind of work to train in a technique themselves so that they can do the work with themselves. So what's your take on that?
I would absolutely agree. And my preference is always to empower others to be able to have this tool. When people contact and they want to book a session, I'll have that conversation with them depending on, what it is that they want to work with and what they want to change. Sometimes people come with a sort of a huge, what I call a shopping list of things they want to change. So everything from relationships to finances to health and fitness, with this huge kind of chunk of a body of work that they want to work with. Mm-hmm. And so actually being able to have the opportunity to start to work through some of that yourself with a tool that you have that works and you trust, there's sometimes more value, I think, in being able to do little and often than there is to, come for a session or 2 sessions or even 3 sessions and try and tick everything off on that list.
Yeah. It's a lot. And I've absolutely had that conversation with people as well. I'm just a facilitator. I'm not an instructor, but there have been many times when I've had a discovery call with people that show up with that shopping list. And I think, you know what? I could do this work with you. It would be very expensive. It would take a long time. Why don't you go to this website, look at the workshops, train in this technique yourself, do all the work you can do, and when you need extra help, or you feel stuck and you're not sure what to do, then give me a call. I find it really, really empowering to do the work with yourself. And I find it just really, if you're dedicated to your personal development and you're dedicated to your growth, and this is something that's very important to you, why would you not train in a technique that you can use with yourself, a tool you can have your entire life? I mean, even if you just did the basic workshop in PSYCH-K or the basic anything else,
exactly,
you'd have that tool forever to use with yourself when you need it.
And even if you are the type of person who's absolutely dedicated to personal development, we all come up against those speed bumps in life, don't we? And so to be able to have, they are usually the reminders, aren't they, that we need to make a change. So if you've got that tool, you can immediately change it in the moment and move forward and then look at, well, what else is there? Is there anything else that I need to work with? And that is incredibly empowering. You know, we move from a place of being a victim to being empowered and be able to take control of our lives and be able to create whatever it is that we want for ourselves. I don't believe that life is supposed to be about suffering.
No, absolutely not. No. And it's about taking responsibility for your experience and how you choose to experience your life. Do you want to suffer? Does that feel good to you? Or do you want something else? Do you want something different?
Yeah.
It's like,
and knowing that it's possible to change it.
Absolutely. And having the tool to do it. Yeah.
It's a fixed state. You know, that isn't your birthright and you weren't destined to be that, you know, for the rest of your life, that it's possible to be able to change.
Yeah. It's like having a headache and not knowing that taking aspirin or paracetamol will get rid of it and just sitting there and suffering with it. Are you going to sit there and suffer with it? Or are you going to try to find a solution to it? Because having a headache is not good. Yeah,
absolutely. If you have the tool, then you can reach for it as and when.
Absolutely.
You're not reliant on somebody else.
Yeah.
So you're not also giving away your power. That's the beautiful thing that I love about working with yourself is that recognizing, and something that we teach in PSYCH-K is recognizing that you have all the wisdom within already. You know, whether you know it or not, you have the wisdom there, accessing it, and the tool helps you to access all the answers that are already within you.
And I think one of the things that I like about the philosophy of PSYCH-K, or kind of the attitude or the vision of PSYCH-K, is that you're a facilitator. You're not the expert working with someone else. You're just helping them facilitate the process of doing the work because they're doing the work, the client or the person that you're working with, your partner. And they're a partner. They're not, they're not this person that's beneath you, and you're working with them, not working on them.
Or doing anything to someone else.
Let me do some mindset work to you. And I think, to me, that's very important. And I don't think I realized that when I first approached PSYCH-K, but the more training I did, the more I got to know kind of that perspective, that philosophy, the more I realized that's how I want to work with people. I do not want to look down on people. I do not want to be the expert. I want to facilitate the process. I want to help them. Yeah. And in the same way, I want to help myself.
And that's the shift again, isn't it? Because culturally, I think we're used to being in that space, you know, with authority figure, somebody who's experienced, who has all the answers that you go to be fixed, you know, for want of a better word. And, you know, PSYCH-K is so far removed from that. It's about coming back to that space of giving you your power back, rather than feeling disempowered and giving your power away to some other authority who you perceive has all the answers. They don't. Yeah. You know, I fundamentally believe that we know ourselves better than anybody else. Whether we listen to that wisdom is another story. But PSYCH-K is something, and, you know, there are other tools that reconnect you with that innate wisdom that's inside you already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's the beautiful thing.
And that as we're talking, it's reminding me, NLP does have something kind of similar, which is the presuppositions. Everyone's always doing the best they can at any given time, given the circumstances and tools that they have. And so I think absolutely there are other techniques out there that operate from that kind of philosophy. And again, it's about finding what works for you, finding what's right for you. So that leads me on to the next question, is how to find the right technique for you. I know we've kind of touched on that earlier, but what would you recommend to people that say, oh, you know, I heard about PSYCH-K, I saw the Bruce Lipton video, I read, you know, the biology of belief, and he mentions it in there, but how do I know it's right for me?
Yeah. Typically, people start by reading
Yeah.
something about it. So that's the first bit. So exploring. And often people come to the PSYCH-K workshops, particularly having read a lot of Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, where he references PSYCH-K as a tool for change. So reading a little bit about mindset work to begin with, just explore a few books, see what we were talking about before, what resonates. And then maybe have an experience of that tool. So if it's possible to connect with somebody so that you can have a direct experience. It's not something I did. I mean, I jumped straight into the workshop. That resonance was so strong. But for some people, it's useful to be able to experience it first.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if it's PSYCH-K, obviously we have the PSYCH-K website, the www.psychk.com, which there is a list of all the workshops available that you can attend. The basic 3-day workshop is the first introduction to PSYCH-K, which is incredible. Workshop in itself.
Yeah.
So, and on that 3-day workshop, you have all the tools that you need to be able to access limiting beliefs, to be able to change them for yourself and for others, whether it's friends, family members. Lots of people just come to the workshop really to work with themselves or with their friends and family, or beyond if you want to work professionally with that tool. But I would say dip your toe in the water in some way. So get to read a little bit about a variety of different tools, that get a first-hand experience if you can, or have a conversation, with somebody who teaches it, or somebody who, as us, we're facilitators, somebody who facilitates that tool, to get a better understanding of whether it's a good fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also be open to trying different things, but be also open to trying different facilitators or practitioners within each modality. And I know this can get expensive, but sometimes the first NLP practitioner or PSYCH-K facilitator or theta healer that you go to might not be the right person for you, but the technique or modality might be. So maybe like part of it resonates with you, part of it doesn't, and maybe it's the right modality, the wrong person, the wrong modality, the right person. Try to kind of pick apart how you felt about that experience.
And that's where it's useful to make first-time contact with that person and have a conversation and just check in with yourself again. Does this person feel like a good fit for me or not? Years ago, when I was working as a homeopath, I'd hear this quite a lot. People had been to see another homeopath and they'd come away and say homeopathy doesn't work. Whereas actually the resonance between themselves and the homeopath just wasn't quite right for whatever reason. Yes. So then finding somebody else, if they were willing to do that and to have another experience, they had a very different experience second time round. So we're in the exploration, make sure that the person that you're having the conversation with or want to work with in some way is a good fit for you. Absolutely. It's a good point.
Yeah, because I know I've had that experience in the past where I've liked a particular technique or modality, but perhaps the first person that I went to was not the right person. So, I mean, for me, even though I've trained in PSYCH-K and I use it with myself, and then I have my heart-centered energy work which I also work with myself, I do from time to time see other professionals, both in PSYCH-K and also other techniques. Because I feel like sometimes I can't see everything that's going on for me. And so when I'm stuck and I'm not getting the results that I want, and I feel like I've done a lot of work, I'm not sure where to go, there's clearly something that I'm not seeing, that's when I say, who can I work with? And I find another professional. And I've got kind of my list of my top people that I love to work with. Do you ever work with another professional? And if so, when and why and how do you know that it's time?
Absolutely. And it's exactly the same situation. So if it's something that I'm a bit stuck with, or, as you said, I'm not quite seeing an aspect of it. So maybe I've done the work, I've changed the beliefs around it, worked with some goal statements, but there's something still not quite allowing me to move forward. Then there could be another few things at play. There might be some resistance going on in some way. There might be something we call secondary gain happening, where that can also be quite hidden underneath the surface, underneath the goal in some ways. Secondary gain, we talk about being where there's a benefit. If there were to be a benefit to staying as you are, with the same behaviors, habits, staying as you are, that benefit outweighs the need or the desire to move forward. So sometimes that can be useful to work with somebody else to help you identify what that secondary gain might be.
That can be hard to see on your own.
It's almost like another set of eyes on
Yes.
the situation, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Helping you to just look under the surface even deeper. But usually, or the other way to look at it is if it's something that's quite big that you think is challenging to deal with on your own, or that you just don't know where to start with it, where is the priority? Somebody else can help you to, through conversation sometimes, where would be a good place to start? Where's the priority here? And again, as a facilitator, we're never making that decision. We're just helping our partner who we're working with to identify that for themselves. But sometimes the two-way conversation is really useful just to give you a sense of direction, to move you forward again.
Yeah. Also, I love working with people who work with other techniques because it's like if I've done a lot of PSYCH-K or I've done a lot of heart-centered energy work, I love going to a session with someone else who does theta healing or other stuff. It's just nice to approach the same topic from a completely different angle with a completely different way of working and a different method of transforming stuff. It almost feels like self-care to me.
Yeah.
Like taking a nice bath or reading a nice book in a nice chair snuggled up with a blanket. Having a session with someone else almost feels like that for me. I feel really kind of protected and supported, and it just feels really lovely.
And it's beautiful, isn't it, to be able to, there's so much value in being able to have that conversation. And for some people, when they first come to a session for the very first time, if they've never experienced any kind of tool or one-to-one work, it might be the very, very first time they've felt truly heard.
Yeah.
So to be able to have some of that conversation, to be able to just express, there's value in just expressing how you're feeling and what the situation is that's going on for you at that particular moment that's challenging you, even just to have that conversation with another person who is holding that space for you, is really there for you in a totally non-judgmental way, supporting you the whole way. There's huge value in that.
Absolutely.
Before you even started to do the work.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. And having that other person's perspective. I mean, there's so many times, a lot of my friends are PSYCH-K facilitators and other practitioners and coaches. And so my conversations with my friends are probably not normal conversations. Because there's always some kind of, So I remember
perspective.
Exactly. Or like a teaching or like a learning perspective.
An evolutionary conversation.
Yes. Like there's whole new layers to it. And there have been times, I remember this one time with my friend Kathy Ballard, we were talking about this situation that really bothered me. And I was like, and I was kind of ranting to her. And she was like, well, and she asked me these questions. And she gave me a different perspective. And I was like, oh my God, you're right. I'm so glad that happened. It was something that really, really bothered me that had happened with another person. And I was like, I'm so glad she did that. Because, and it's just completely
the opportunity in it that you wouldn't ordinarily, because you're in that angst of the situation.
Yes. And
somebody else's perspective.
She completely flipped it on its head. And I was like, I'm so glad that happened. I'm so glad we had this conversation because now I'm not bothered. I'm really grateful. So having another person's perspective is it's just priceless.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing.
So how do we know when it's time to get help from someone else? I know we've kind of touched on that, but what are kind of the warning signs?
So I think if there's a sense of feeling stuck, is a great warning sign. It's a great flag, isn't it? Okay, I'm trying to do this work, but I'm either not moving forward in the way I want to, or I'm stuck with what to do next. That's a great flag to say it's time to ask for help. And actually the other thing is being okay with asking for help. Yes. And receiving help.
Yes.
Because that's often a challenge I see when people struggle on, thinking that actually I need to do all of this myself.
Yeah.
And that's not the case at all.
I know that doing this work with other professionals it is an investment, both time and money. But once you've done this training, assuming that you've done some kind of training and something for yourself, you have a network of other people. And you can do swap sessions.
Exactly.
Like, I can help you, you can help me. And I've absolutely done that with people before. And it's been really, really helpful. So always have kind of in the back of your mind that you've got this support network of people that you can do an exchange with.
Exactly. And share experiences, share successes and celebrate together. When you do make a big shift and move forward, if you're working with yourself, it's great to have somebody else to be able to say, hey, you know, this is what happened. And this is where I'm at right now. Isn't that great? Somebody to kind of cheerlead you on, really, is another important aspect in that network, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of connected.
So how else do we know when to ask for help?
I suppose if there is any secondary gain there, you know, if you're not sure what's going on and you've tried to move forward yourself and you're stuck and you still, the other thing is when you keep falling back into those habits and behaviors.
Yes, because that does happen.
I think the other thing is if you've made a change and you're already taking some action, or you know that it's beneficial to take some action, but the action is just not happening. You know, you're not able to take that action with ease, then there's something else going on there.
Yeah.
So if you're not able to identify why that is the way it is and why you're falling back into old patterns and habits of behavior, then maybe asking somebody else to help you, you know, with identifying what's going on. Because it's possible there could be some secondary gain thing going on there.
Yeah. I think also for me, it's when I've had certain kind of big issues that I've worked with myself over the years. And it's like, oh, I'm so tired of working on this thing and it's not, you know, and I don't want to do any more work with myself on this. And then it can help to have some, like, give it to someone else to see how they approach it. Because it's like, I am tired of this. I don't want to do any more work.
And if it's something quite big, then it may be that you're working sort of at it from a sort of surface perspective. So you're still moving forward, but it's like with the support of somebody else, it's possible that you might be able to go a bit deeper towards the core of what's going on. Not that we need to know what, you know, where it came from in order to be able to make the change, but sometimes you could just go that little bit deeper. And if you kind of find that core or the thing that sort of unravels everything else, if you like, when you make that change at that level. So sometimes working with somebody will help you to do that.
Absolutely.
See things again from a different perspective.
So sometimes when we do this work, we have resistance. And I know we've talked about secondary gain, but resistance has a variety of different flavors.
It does.
So let's talk about resistance. You know, it's like on one level, we want to make progress. We want to make changes. We want to do stuff. But then there's a part of us that's like, no. Things must stay the way they are.
Comfort zone.
Yes, exactly. Must stay here because I know what this is like. I don't like it, but I know it.
I know. And by nature, the subconscious mind's role really is to keep us safe.
Yeah.
So, you know, it likes the familiar. It likes to be within our comfort zone. And if it's something that it doesn't know already is survivable, then it will try and keep you safe.
Yeah, change is scary.
Resistance might show up in that respect. You know, your subconscious mind just saying, hang on a second, we don't know whether this is a good plan or not. Let's just stay over here. So that's where resistance might show up. And that might just be to even finding help, to looking for a tool. You know, you think, well, I don't know whether I can change it. And if I change this, then that's going to change. And then something else is going to happen that is way outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah. Or even thinking like, this is so big, I will never be able to change this.
Yeah.
It can't be changed.
Just by nature, having limiting beliefs around that. Yeah. You know, it's not possible. My family, you know, have always had this challenge. What makes me any different? You know, I'm destined to be the same. To not be able to shift or change this and have something else than they've already had. Yeah.
What else does resistance look like? Like, what have you seen in yourself or maybe with clients, or how else have you?
It might be things like based on experience and beliefs. So it may be that you think, I want this amazing relationship, but I'm never going to ever have that. You know, because past experience showed me that that's not possible. Yeah. You know, I'm in this loop of having the same experience over and over again. So why would it be any different, even if I change my own mindset around it? What's going to change that's going to attract a different person into my life? Yeah. So it's that lack of belief. You know, we haven't got the supported beliefs in place to think that it's ever going to happen. So you just don't do it. You give up. Right. So, well, I'm resigned to have this experience in my life.
This is just how life is for me.
This is just how life is for me.
Yeah. And it can also show up in practical ways, like forgetting the name of the person that someone recommended to you, or losing their phone number. Or I once had a client who had back when I was seeing clients in person, she had been to see me before, so she knew where my consultation room was, came back for another visit, drove to a completely different town an hour away. And I just thought, like, you've been here before, you know, like that was clearly resistance. She was like, I don't know how I ended up here. And I was like, I know how you ended up there. Because no one else can make that mistake. You clearly have some resistance going on.
Exactly. So that subconscious resistance just taking you in the opposite direction.
Subconscious is like, we're not getting off the M25 here. We're going to go somewhere else today. Somewhere safe.
I've seen
somewhere
that
safe
happen.
where nothing happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm never going to get there, and then that's fine. I won't have to do the work.
Exactly. And again, this is at the subconscious level. Like, she was seriously perplexed as to how she managed to drive somewhere totally different. Because the subconscious mind was the one who was kind of in charge there.
I know. Sat nav stops working is another one. So it's like 30 minutes away and the sat nav just completely clicks off and you've lost all connection and now you don't know where you're going. That's another classic.
So your subconscious is on board with the sat nav. It's like sabotage.
So they're ringing you, and sabotage is another word, isn't it? It's that self-sabotage, isn't it? That prevents you from moving in the direction you want to go.
So let's talk about self-sabotage, because I think it's a very common way of looking at it, but it's really not, because it's just your subconscious trying to keep you safe. So
and it's just you getting in your own way, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and not even consciously.
No, not consciously. So that's the thing. That's the tricky thing, isn't it? Because we don't necessarily see it that way. But if you're able to look at it from a different perspective and think, it is literally only my subconscious trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
You know, preventing me from going into the unknown because this is familiar.
Yeah.
You know, although I don't like what I've got going on right now, it's familiar.
Yeah.
And it's that comfort within the discomfort, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's the safety within the discomfort.
Yeah.
Because at least I know what I'm getting.
It's like, when does the pain point get to the point where you just can't tolerate it any further? And that's often when people really feel moved to make the change, because the discomfort is, you know, more than actually wanting to move forward.
Exactly. You've hit rock bottom and it's really, really, really uncomfortable.
Exactly. You know, you can't stay there any longer.
So let's say you've trained in a technique and you go home and you're like, what do I do now? Like, did I really learn this thing? Do I know it well enough? How do you get the confidence to work on your own with yourself at home when you don't have your instructor on the other side of the room that you can ask questions?
It is simply practice. Practice. And that's what's needed, you know, to go away and to be able to put what you've learned into practice. And that's the wonderful thing, I think, about PSYCH-K is, you know, after the workshop, I've been on many workshops before where I've come home and put the folder on the shelf and not looked at it or felt overwhelmed. And the great thing about the workshop is it is very practically based.
Yeah.
And so you're learning a chunk of information, then you're putting it into practice, learning a chunk of information, putting it into practice. So by the end of the 3 days, you're going away feeling confident enough to be able to make a start. And then the key is practice. And whether you make that a daily practice or not, to build particularly with self-muscle testing, which we teach at the workshop, so you can work with yourself, is to find a method that works for you and to stay in that place of curiosity and just consistently practice. Because the more you practice, the more your confidence will grow.
Absolutely.
And the more you'll start to see results, and that will build, if you like. Start to see results, it motivates you to do more of the same.
And it gives you more confidence because you see, well, clearly I'm doing something right because things are changing. Yeah. I think I was just so obsessed with the technique when I got home that it was just, I didn't even have to make an effort to practice because I loved it so much. It was like, we're doing as much as we can.
And it's more doing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Than anything. So it is incredibly practical just to use it and to put it into practice. You know, the sheets of the change process, the balance, as we call them in PSYCH-K, are laid out so you can just follow them step by step, quite simply. So it's very easy to put it into practice.
So we're talking about this. I'm thinking about kind of all the different things that I've worked on over the years with PSYCH-K, and a lot of it was very kind of foundation stuff, like self-confidence, self-esteem, self-trust.
Yeah.
But I was coming from an okay place when I started this. I was no longer in a state of crisis, and I had been in a state of crisis years prior. What would you recommend for people who are maybe listening to this and they're thinking, I'm in such a bad place, like everything is terrible, like I don't even know what to do, I'm overwhelmed, like what do I do? How do I, what? Like everything is just awful. Where do I start?
Yeah. And that's when I would say ask for help.
Yeah.
Initially, I would say don't start to gather tools or explore tools. I mean, if you're in a difficult place, then do some reading. Again, you could see a tool that resonates, but I would say ultimately ask for some help.
Yeah.
You're more likely to identify and find a tool, I think, and be able to use it for yourself. We're talking about here when we're using the daily practice for ourselves, when you're not in that state of crisis. So when you can work with smaller, more practical things rather than working with some huge, big experience you've got going on in your life, that's when I would say ask for help. Would you agree, Holly?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of get out of that dark place, get out of that overwhelm, get out of the bad spot. Yeah. And then once you're feeling a bit more neutral, then you can kind of start, it gives you a different perspective.
And you could do it little and often, as something comes up, those little speed bumps, not that big hump in the road.
Absolutely. Not the mountain that
you need to climb and get some help, some mountaineering help.
Get some help with the mountain.
Some Sherpas.
Exactly. So I kind of feel like we've alluded to this, but let's be really specific. How would you recommend, or how would you suggest that people might make mindset work a habit? Like make it a regular part of their life, not something that like they get some help now and then 6 months later they get some help, but they're regularly and consistently doing this work with themselves or, getting help from someone else. How would you recommend that people make it a habit?
Well, I think firstly, when you're working with yourself, I often hear from people that, they'll make a note of things that they want to work with. So if something pops up in their mind, they'll write it down and they'll say, I'm going to come back to that. Yeah. And they put it on the shelf and they leave it. The great thing about working with yourself is that if you can do it in the moment, there's so much value just to be able to write, this thing's just happened. I just want to shift it here and now, in this present moment as it is in existence right now, rather than writing a shopping list and saying, okay, this evening or at the weekend, I'm going to work through all of these issues. You can do that. But personally, I think there's a huge value in being able to shift things as and when they pop up.
Yeah. And I think I really like that you called that up, because when I first started doing PSYCH-K, that's how I would work with myself. I would make a big list, like throughout the day. Anytime I was doing something, I would think, oh, that. And I would write the list, and then I would get to the end of the day with 20 different things. And then I would do a big session with myself.
Yeah.
But I guess that's what worked for me in the beginning. But then I got to the point where I had done so much stuff, and I kind of worked through all the basics, that then it was easier for me to, I see something, do it in the moment.
Exactly. So, rather than wait, sort of put it on the shelf and wait.
Yeah, it never went on the shelf. Like every day I was doing it.
That's great, because lots of people say that they write the list and then they never come back to it. Yeah. Or they come back to the list and they think, what did I mean by that?
Yeah. It was relevant in the moment, but
it's not such a tangible feeling or an emotional charge to it as there was in the moment to be able to shift it then. Yeah. When it's on a list, it doesn't feel quite the same.
So how has doing mindset work changed your life?
Beyond recognition. Where to start, Holly? Beyond recognition. My life looks nothing like it did before PSYCH-K. And so exactly as you said, it's like my life before PSYCH-K and my life after PSYCH-K. Yeah. Not after PSYCH-K, but PSYCH-K going forward.
Yeah, after you discovered it.
After I discovered it. Yeah. There's no, it's completely different. Yeah. The things that I have in my life, the sense of ease and contentment I have, the ability to be able to shift and change things if necessary, to be able to support my family, my children, is huge. Yeah. Absolutely huge. Just the ease and joy that I have. Yeah. And even just the network of amazing people I have around me as a result of meeting people through PSYCH-K, through this particular tool. But I'm sure it's the same with many different tools. Is meeting like-minded people. It always astounds me when people come to either a workshop or I run practice days too. And people say, this is a space where I can be who I am. I can be me. because I'm not always me with people that I'm around.
Yeah.
I maybe go to a day job where I can't talk about this stuff, so to be completely aligned with who you are and be able to express that in the world, I think is just a phenomenal thing, and something that I try not to take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because I do feel my life is very aligned in that way. I feel very blessed, surrounded by like-minded people.
And for me, it's also about seeing new possibilities that I didn't think were available to me, or that I didn't think I was capable of achieving, because I've got the increased self-esteem, self-confidence, and I realize that I'm capable of doing so much more than a few years ago I thought I could.
Exactly. So you have a new level of potential that you didn't see before at all, but you move forward into that new reality and you see, actually, there's even more potential than I ever thought existed.
Yeah. Yay! I love this stuff. So
amazing.
I know. I love it. Like, it's been such an important part of my life only for the last, not even 6 years. I mean, I did my basic workshop in PSYCH-K in the end of July 2013. So it's been 5.5 years. Not that long ago. But in those 5.5 years, I have used that tool and heart-centered energy work so much that I've made such massive shifts in my life, and I can't believe it's like I'm a completely different person compared to before.
It's incredible. And the other thing that I just want to say too, in response to, the muscle testing particularly that we use, but any tool really, is the more that you fine tune working with yourself, I think the more you listen to that inner wisdom, the more you listen to that, what we call in PSYCH-K superconscious mind, it's intuition, higher self, whatever you want to call it, the more you get the messages that you need to hear. Before you have to reach that place of emotional charge or trauma or drama in your life that's real suffering, you don't need to reach that point quite in the way that you did perhaps before, because you're fine-tuning that conversation, you're hearing things much more quickly. I think we've become so disconnected from nature, having lived in the cycles and rhythms of nature, we were much more in tune with ourselves, our inner wisdom. And these days, we live in a world that's driven by the fast pace of technology, and we're disconnected largely, aren't we, from the natural world. So it's about, for me also, PSYCH-K is something that's brought me back in tune, in harmony with my inner wisdom and with my own inner nature, landscape, if you like. And I think the more that we can do that individually and collectively, the world will be a very, very different place, Holly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the more people that take responsibility for themselves in their lives and creating the lives that they want, everyone's going to be lifted up, because when you do this work with yourself, you're an example for your kids, your parents, your partner, your friends, family, everyone in your life.
And you think you're doing it on your own at home, working with your own challenges, which is true. But actually, when we think about it, the ripple effects of doing that, committing to doing that work with yourself, go far beyond that, don't they?
Absolutely. So this is not just for the benefit of yourself. It's for the benefit of everyone around you. Exactly.
The way that you relate to others around you, interact, exactly as you said, the example that you're setting just by showing people the possibilities and potential. Actually, I thought the ceiling was here in terms of my own potential. Gosh, actually it's far beyond that. There's so much more possibility.
Oh, I love this stuff. So I feel like we kind of covered the topic. How do you feel? Do you have any final words that you'd like to share?
I would say start simply, not in a place of crisis, which is what we've already mentioned. Have a sense of curiosity. Be okay with exploring. Don't feel that you're going to fail. That the journey is the journey. We're evolving, aren't we? It's not about the destination. It's about exploring and being curious along the way. Find something that you resonate with. When you do, learn it for yourself and then commit to making it a practice. Taking back that power, that wisdom, believing that you have that inner wisdom already within you so that you can tap into that. And you will build, your intuition will build on that, and you will get the messages much more quickly rather than needing to go into a place of trauma in your life before you get to make that change.
Good.
And know that it's available for anybody.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's not like you have to have some special something within you.
You don't have to come from a background of being a coach or some other discipline to add some of this tool.
Yeah.
This could just purely be for you in your everyday life.
And anyone can learn it.
Absolutely.
So where can people find you online? I'll put the links in the show notes for everyone, but I'd like you to just mention it so we can.
Sure. Okay. So my website is simply my name. So it's sharonlock.com. So I've got all of my background information, workshop dates, when they're available. Also, people can look at if PSYCH-K is something that's interesting to you. You can check out the PSYCH-K website, which is psychk.com. And again, there's workshops all the way over throughout the world. And there's two of us instructors teaching in the UK. So there's plenty of availability to be able to attend a workshop.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me.
Really enjoyed this conversation.
We love having these conversations. It's slightly different sharing our conversation.
But I think the inspiration for this podcast episode came from a conversation that we were having. Exactly. And I said, other people need to hear this.
Yeah. This is just our usual kind of conversation, Holly.
This is how we catch up.
It is. Off on a tangent, getting super excited.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hope you found that interesting and useful. Please drop me a line and let me know what you thought about this week's episode. You can email me at holly@hollywharton.com or find me on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram and get in touch. I would also love for you to join me on Patreon. If you head to patreon.com/HollyWharton, you can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month and you get exclusive access to content and done-for-you mindset work that I don't share anywhere else, including a monthly Q&A. So I would love to see you on Patreon. That's patreon.com, patreon.com/HollyWharton. Again, thank you so much for listening. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to tune in each week. And next week, I will see you back with another episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. Remember to visit hollywharton.com/295 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.